In Palestine, Israeli occupation forces killed 55 people in Gaza and wounded over 230 others in less than 12 hours. Russia warns of Western states' attempts to put pressure on Georgia's authorities and interfere in the election campaign as the October 26th parliamentary polls approach. And in Argentina, professors and students take over 100 university faculties in response to the presidential veto on the public education funding law. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In the United States, the Pentagon confirmed on Tuesday that components for an advanced anti-missile system they sent to Israel have started to arrive. The system uses a combination of radar and interceptors to thwart short, medium and intermediate range ballistic missiles and can intercept them inside and outside Earth's atmosphere during their final stage of flight. In this context, the U.S. government institution declared that the structure would be fully operational in the near future. Furthermore, the entity expressed that they will continue sending military personnel to aid the Zionist regime forces, whose aggressions against several countries in the Middle East are currently escalating the violence in the region. Meanwhile, in Palestine, during the last 12 hours, Israel has killed 55 people in Gaza and wounded more than 230. The Zionist army has not stopped its heavy artillery and aerial bombardment on southern Gaza, where 10 members of the same family were killed. In turn, survivors struggled to feel safe anywhere in the region, as 6 other Palestinians were murdered in the center of the Strip. The wounded are now taking shelter in the remains of the Nasser hospital, while doctors reportedly have no supplies to treat their serious injuries. The Euro-Mediterranean Observatory for Human Rights confirms that more than 400,000 Palestinians living in the north of Gaza could die of hunger and thirst, denouncing the serious situation in the refugee camps. Havalia, Beit Hanun and Beit Lahia are the areas of refuge for displaced persons most besieged by the famine imposed by the occupation. Constant shelling by the occupying forces has prevented the entry of humanitarian missions for the past 10 days. Hundreds of Palestinians face the difficult situation to which they are subjected, especially children and the elderly, decided to go to a collection center on Monday, which hours later was bombed by the genocidal army, killing 10 people. In Lebanon, since early Tuesday morning, Hezbollah reports heavy fighting against Israeli infantry troops in the southern border. The resistance is keeping at bay the Zionist troops that have made several attempts to break into the territory through the Rab Thalin area. Israeli artillery is supporting the genocidal troops by shelling residential areas of Al-Taibeh and Deir Sajan, but combat on the ground is more complex. Hezbollah issued a statement confirming that in the midst of their struggle in defense of the Palestinian cause and in support of the honorable resistance, they are confronting the Zionist forces. Israeli media shared this Tuesday that at least 34 soldiers lost their lives in the fighting against Hezbollah. The United Nations Security Council unanimously endorsed on Monday the continuation of the United Nations Interim Force for Lebanon, UNIFIL. This decision represents a major setback for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is demanding the withdrawal of the force. Israel received a barrage of worldwide criticisms when it became known that its occupying army forces had wounded several members of the UNIFIL. The United Nations peacekeeping chief Jean-Pierre Lacroix explained that the Council had expressed unanimous support for the mission in Lebanon. The Zionist premier accuses them of cooperating with the Lebanese resistance, but human rights activists point to him for wanting to eliminate any witness to the genocide perpetrated by his forces.
To emphasize that this was a decision that was very carefully considered based on a number of elements and criteria. Of course, safety and security of the peacekeepers is a paramount priority, but there are a number of other elements, and one of them is the responsibility that we have and UNIFIL has in regard to the mandate that was given to it by the Security Council.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Russia warns of Western states' attempts to put pressure on Georgia's authorities and interfere in the election campaign as the October 26 parliamentary polls approach. Moscow said it has observed open attempts by Western countries led by the United States to exert pressure on the authorities of Georgia and directly influence the course of the election campaign. In this context, the Russian government has also been emphatic in stressing that it does not meddle in any way in the internal affairs of its neighbor nation. Western countries softened their rhetoric against Georgia after it passed a law in May for authorities to protect the country from foreign interference. In Spain, the Court of Madrid decided to reopen the investigation into espionage against Charles Puigdemont's lawyer Gonzalo Boye using the Israeli software Pegasus. The court claims there is reason enough to continue and overturns the dismissal issued by an examining judge. According to the Capital's Court, Mr. Boye's case was not investigated properly. Citizen Lab records 18 hacking attempts on the lawyer's cell phone between January and May 2020. The group also proved that on October 30, the same year, a successful hack took place just after one of his defendants was arrested. Gonzalo Boye claimed at the time that the Spanish authorities legitimized this form of espionage. And in other informations, we are going to be staying in Spain, where the Congress debates a law that would prevent those convicted of terrorism from running for office if they have not repented or apologized. The debate was prompted by the Popular Party. The proposal implies reforming the organic law of the general electoral regime. The proposal comes after the absolute majority of the Popular Party rejected the law on the exchange of criminal records in the European Union, which will allow the early release of ETA prisoners. The party members insist on the need to protect, recognize and honor the memory of the victims. In Germany, Berlin Zoo visitors will from Wednesday be able to catch their first glimpse of two rabbit-sized panda cubs born almost 8 weeks ago. The 2.5-kilogram baby bears will take turns to greet an admiring public in the zoo's panda garden for about an hour a day from 1:30 p.m. local time. Since their birth on August 22nd, the still unnamed cubs have been in the care of their mother, Meng Meng, and an expert team, including specialists from China's Guangdong Panda Base. Zoo Director Andreas Nieriem said that for the first time visitors will be able to observe the growing up of the little pandas. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff held an emergency meeting after reporting and condemning the destruction of connecting roads to the north. Although Pyongyang has not made any statement, it warned earlier that it would carry out this operation. The incident occurred after South Korean drones flew over the northern territory and dropped propaganda leaflets. In turn, the Deputy Director of the Propaganda Department of the DPRK Workers' Party, Kim Jong-un, said that the overflight of drones in its airspace was equivalent to a declaration of war. The U.S. presence and its constant military exercises have led to increasing tensions in the area. In this context, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning warned of the intensification of tensions in Asia and urged all involved parties to resolve their conflicts through diplomacy. Furthermore, the official shared Beijing's concern about the welfare of the region as China reassured its commitment to maintaining peace and stability on the Korean peninsula.
The relevant situation. As a close neighbor of the peninsula, China is paying attention to the development of its situation and the dynamics of North Korea-South Korea relations. Tensions on the peninsula do not serve the common interests of all parties, and the priority is to avoid further escalation of conflicts. China's position on maintaining peace and stability on the peninsula and promoting a political solution to this issue remains unchanged. We also hope that all parties will make joint efforts toward this goal.
On Tuesday, head of state and top diplomats from member countries of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization arrived in Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, to attend the 23rd summit. Participants believe that today's summit will be achieved positive results and provide more impetus to the security, stability and development of regional countries. Since the establishment of the organization 23 years ago, its member states have always adhered to Shanghai spirit, continuously enhanced good neighborliness and deepened cooperation in various fields. In this context, the Chinese Premier Li Qian, who is currently on an official visit in Pakistan, will reportedly attend the council meeting where the international community expects the organization to shoulder greater responsibility and achieve more practical cooperation outcomes. In Ethiopia, Addis Ababa City Sanitation Management Agency reported significant advances in waste recycling by this year. The agency estimated that out of the around 587,000 tons of solid waste generated in Addis Ababa capital, about 67,510 tons were recycled, which is clearly an upsurge from previous years. Furthermore, Deputy Director General of the agency, Ato Mulat, underscored the positive impact of recycling as it produced approximately 1.1 billion birr in revenue, creating job opportunities for over 800 citizens. The Ethiopian government has been pursuing recycling projects nationwide to curb pollution triggered by kosher garbage dump, among other places. A scrap collector described how they recycle in the capital.
Plastics are recycled into products like plates and jars, while metals are sent to factories, melted down, and recycled into building steel. This area is called Mina Lesh Teret because you can find everything here.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Argentinian professors and students take over 100 university faculties in response to the presidential veto on the public education funding law. Demonstrators informed that assemblies and public lessons are being held in the occupied faculties and assured the demonstrations will go on for the next couple of days. The Union Front of National Universities confirmed that there will be a new strike with cessation of activities announced for next Thursday. Furthermore, students of different faculties will join the blockade of streets and mobilize towards the Plaza de Mayo in Buenos Aires on Wednesday. We stay in Argentina as in full alignment with the United States interest that the country brought together both continents' defense ministers at an international conference prized by the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin. While the Conference of Defense Ministers of the Americas allegedly seeks to boost understanding in the area of defense, the event leaves some nations out such as Nicaragua, Venezuela and Cuba. Under the pretext of addressing common issues, the Argentinian Minister of Defense Luis Petri targeted Venezuelan democracy during the opening speech and positioned its country with Ukraine and Israel in world geopolitics. In this way, Petri's speech closely resembled that of the commander of the U.S. Southern Command, Laura Richardson, who also traveled to Argentina to take part in the event. In this context, the commander of the United States Southern Command, Laura Richardson, said on Monday that the U.S. relationship with Argentina is iron strong. During this period, Argentina sought to strengthen its ties with the United States, adopting economic and diplomatic policies that favored U.S. interests. This approach included Argentina's participation in U.S.-led peacekeeping missions and the adoption of neoliberal economic reforms that were welcomed by the U.S. government. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela has issued an official communique rejecting the latest statements made by the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who allied with the extreme far-right sectors of the country's opposition, discredited the results of the July 28th elections and the will of the Venezuelan people in an attempt to interfere with the nation's sovereignty. In the statement, the Venezuelan government strongly rejects the remarks made by the U.S. Secretary of State and calls him a charlatan at the service of infamous lobbyists, stuck in a false and monotonous narrative against the will of the Venezuelan people. The communique stresses that the victory of President Nicolás Maduro Moros last July 28th was not only a demonstration of the popular support backing the Bolivarian Revolution, but also an exercise of dignity and an exemplary repudiation of the aggressions that, from the U.S. government, have been applied for more than 10 years against Venezuela. The document also denounces that the obsessive policy of the Monroe Doctrine, as well as the neocolonial and imperial conduct of the governments of the United States of America, are the basis of the support to fascist groups in the constant aggressions against the Venezuelan institutionality, and closes by reinforcing that these actions will continue to be faced through the full exercise of the revolutionary democracy enshrined in the Venezuelan Constitution. In Mexico, during her Tuesday morning press conference, the President Claudia Sheinbaum stated, in regard to the past elections in Venezuela, her will to respect the principles of free self-determination of peoples, as proclaimed on the Mexican Constitution.
We have a very clear definition of our foreign policy in the Constitution, which is the self-determination of the peoples. At first, there was a call from the three countries after the election in Venezuela for the results of the election to be made public. From now on, we are going to remain, let us say, impartial in this regard. So, Colombia has a position, Brazil has a position, the United States has its own position, and our position is the constitutional one, the self-determination of the peoples.
At the Food and Agriculture Organization Investment Forum 2023 held in Italy, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel asserted that the U.S. blockade affects the Caribbean islands' food security.
Agricultura y alimentación son términos inseparables y en el caso de Cuba resultan estratégicos.
Farmers and food are inseparable terms, and in the case of Cuba it is strategic for many reasons that do not end in a few lines. We live in a time marked by inequality and injustice in economic relations, where it is most cruelly expressed in the painful food shortages suffered by the largest majorities, including progress. In this vital area of this critical global picture, the states left all over the planet by the 2 years of pandemic, with its impact not yet overcome in the supply chain, the dramatic effects of climate change on food productions in Cuba's specific case, the long and deep political damage of the blockade, worsens the economy as a whole with an emphasis on the standard of living of the Cuban people.
In this context, President Díaz-Canel urged the international community to support Cuba and to consider it as a strategic partner for agricultural development and global food security.
I thank you for the opportunity to participate in this forum and invite you to consider Cuba as a strategic partner in a joint path towards agricultural development and food security.
The president of Bolivia, Luis Arce, made changes to the National Police General Staff and appointed General Augusto Russo Sandoval as the force's new general commander. The ceremony took place at the Casa Grande del Pueblo in La Paz, where the Minister of the Interior, Eduardo del Castillo, thanked the directors and commanders of the different units for their work, inviting the newly appointed officials to always put forth their best efforts in the performance of their functions. He reminded that there are no fixed positions and that the officers must strive day by day to achieve good results. Chilean author, scriptwriter and director Antonio Skármeta passed away on Tuesday, October 15th at the age of 83. Skármeta was the author of books such as The Enthusiasm and the 1985 work Burning Patience, later titled The Postman, which has been translated into more than 30 languages and adapted to film and theater, becoming one of the most read novels in Chilean literary history. In addition, he won the Casa de las Americas Prize in 1969 with his book Naked on the Roof. Thanks to his life work that portrayed everyday, real Chile, the author was awarded the country's National Literature Prize in 2014. Was elected as member of the Chilean Language Academy in 2015. Skármeta will be remembered as one of the most important names in the South American country's narrative. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.